Welcome everyone. Welcome to another BRAP Basement Radio Arcade podcast. It is March the 27th, 2024. The time is 9:03 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So, welcome everyone. Welcome. I really appreciate the support as always. Do me a quick favor though. Retweet the link. Let everyone know that we're live. Actually, before you retweet the link, I need to provide the link, the live chat here. There we go. Retweet the link. Let everyone know we're live. The rest of the BRAP panel should be joining us here shortly. But yeah, thank you, everyone. If you're new, subscribe, hit the bell notification so you're alerted when we go live. And if you're not new, you know what to do. Please smash that like button. Helps out the channel. And again, appreciate the support as always. So Bryony says, okay. Brian, can you hear us okay? I guess that's probably the question I should be asking because Brian's saying, did you guys start? You're not hearing audio. Oh, okay. Ignore. Okay. Never mind. All right. Got you, Brian. All right. So we got a lot to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about the game industry. There's an article, there's a podcast by GameIndustry.biz, Christopher Dring, who spoke to developers, publishers at last week's GDC Game Developers Conference held in San Francisco, California. And some interesting things came out from GDC regarding Xbox and even PlayStation 5 Pro. So we're going to talk about those things later in the show. We're going to discuss Phil Spencer dropping some big Xbox-related news as well. I think Phil is really hinting, not just recently, not with the interview he did with Polygon, but he is definitely hinting as to the direction of Xbox. I don't know what else to say other than this is probably, from what I've heard, the last traditional Xbox console, if you will, that the next Xbox is going to take a rather new approach. And so it's going to be interesting. I think, we'll discuss this here in a little bit. I think it sounds interesting. Josh Sayre says you don't say, right? It sounds interesting. So we'll see. We'll discuss that here in a little bit as well. But look, this is a video game podcast first and foremost, and we are platform agnostic as we so often say here on BRAP. And look, many of us have our preferences. I prefer to game on PC, and some of us prefer to game on Xbox. Others prefer to game on PlayStation. But I want to say the majority of the panel probably prefers to game on PC, as they should, as PC is the definitive platform for video games, all things video games. But look, as I mentioned, this is a video game podcast. I don't typically discuss things outside of video games, but I have to discuss this one thing. This is, look, the whole P. Diddy thing right now. Both houses in Los Angeles and Miami raided by the Department of Homeland Security. Actually, before I get to that, I want to welcome B Money to the show. What's up, B Money?
What's going on, man?
Hey, B, I'm going to discuss this Diddy thing real quick because this thing is wild. But yeah, I mean, look, we typically don't discuss things outside of gaming, but this is a pretty big news item. His home was raided by the federal government, really the Department of Homeland Security, as they investigate allegations of sex trafficking. And I gotta, so B, have you been paying close attention to the story? Before I give my thoughts about it, I wanted to ask you that question and kind of get your thoughts first.
I mean, I've seen some of the, headlines and stuff like that, but no, I haven't really been able to dive in and see what's really going on.
Well, his producer, one of his producers, I forgot his name. I'd have to go back and pull it up, but he basically has made some allegations of parties that these wild parties where there's drugs, alcohol, minors, sex workers. I mean, there's just a laundry list of things that would be considered illegal. And And so now the federal government's kind of stepped in and is investigating, and I gotta, to me at least, B Money, this sounds eerily similar. These allegations settling out of court. You know, he settled with his former, was his girlfriend or wife? I think it's his girlfriend, Cassie, who was, I think, on his label at one point. There's allegations by his a former producer of him of Diddy grooming him to have some kind of sexual encounter with Cuba Gooding Jr. And Cuba's had his own legal issues with allegations of inappropriate behavior. But to me, this sounds like eerily similar to the Harvey Weinstein stuff and R. Kelly.
Yeah, but remember when that came out, I said at that time that this happens all the time.
Oh, I don't disagree with you.
Now coming to light.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And some of your favorite people who you would never expect is getting down with, you know, some of the wild shit that goes on in the industry.
Yeah. Yeah, in Hollywood, in the entertainment industry. I mean, I don't disagree with you, B. I don't, and I think, again, I mean, you know, obviously innocent till proven guilty, but as I just mentioned, this is eerily similar. The way this is progressing, very similar to the R. Kelly situation, Harvey Weinstein. You start having people coming out, allegations of inappropriate or misconduct, and you know we know what happened to R. Kelly. You know, and so this is just wild. And I don't disagree with you, B. I mean, you know, there was that. If you saw Cat Williams with Shannon Sharp earlier in the year, and Cat Williams kind of alluded to like this 2024 is gonna be the year where we find stuff out.
Yeah.
Just wild, man. It's just I am mind blown. And look, I don't really get any conspiracy theories, but now I'm like, oh my God, B, what if he actually was involved with the murder of Biggie Smalls?
Hey,
you know, or
anything
Tupac.
is possible, man.
Yeah.
You know, when you start digging a little deeper, you know, finding out history, you know, find out some of the things that have been going on, because this isn't like anything new. These allegations have come upon Diddy for years now. It's just that, you know, him settling with his former girlfriend, that's kind of what, you know, tipped the iceberg, because then that just allowed everybody else to come for that, you know, that same bag. You know, I think he settled for $30 million with her. So
yeah.
or was it 300? It might have been 300 million.
I think
it was something crazy.
It was in the millions. And you know, they had an on and off relationship. They dated for about 10 years.
Yeah. So, I mean, once you have those allegations, you know, come against you, and then you end up selling out of court, you know, lawyers will typically say that the reason that, you know, the case is settled out of court is because they don't want to, you know, break the case open, because they know that it's going to continue to reveal, you know, more things along those lines. So typically, you know, the defense attorneys will go ahead and advise their client to settle, just so they don't have to deal with, you know, everything else that's going to come with it. So when other people see that and you see this big settlement, then, you know, other people who've had those allegations for years are going to start coming to the surface, and, you know, they want to collect too.
Yeah. And there was Torre was on MSNBC, and he actually shared a story about P. Diddy, where he said that he had a family member. He had a family member who was an intern for Diddy, and he said that abruptly that internship ended. He asked the family member what happened. They didn't want to talk about it, and they eventually came out and said, "This is why the internship ended. Diddy had asked me to spend the night at his house." And I said no. Yeah. He said Diddy's like, internship over then. Yeah. So I mean, like, all this stuff is coming out. I mean, I honestly,
there's been videos of him, you know, asking, Justin Bieber to have sleepovers, and it's been a lot of crazy stuff. When Usher was coming up, there was a big
I
thing
saw that.
about him being at Diddy's house, and
Yeah.
having to
And
go to the hospital and things like that. So this isn't, like I said, this isn't something new. This is very similar to the R. Kelly situation, where allegations were put on him for years and years and years, and then it finally broke open, and they were able to file charges against him and actually have him stick. So this is pretty similar, where there's been allegations put against Diddy for many years, and it's kind of been brushed under the rug and moved along because he's this big mogul, and he continues to have these big brands in the industry. But once you start settling, then a lot of people say that's the cover up. So that just allows more people to keep digging.
yeah, more people are going to start coming out too. I think once Cassie started talking, and then we know that one of his somebody else that's involved with him got arrested. Who is it? Hold on a sec here. Let me pull this up. Yeah, this is per USA Today. Ex Diddy associate alleges arrested Young Miami was Mogul's mule. No, I'm sorry. Brendan Paul was Mogul's drug mule. Young Miami was sex worker for Diddy. That actually just came out. And this individual, Brendan Paul, was arrested at the Miami airport. They found drugs on him. And
Yeah, he had the drugs on him.
yeah, and he was arrested, at least on a $2,500 bond. This individual is actually also listed in Little Rod's civil suit against Bad Boy founder, and he's the one, and Cuba Gooding Jr. for sexual assault harassment. So this is the individual who actually has revealed made a lot of allegations about drug use at some of these parties, the distribution of ecstasy, cocaine, GHB, ketamine, which I think is I think that's Special K, marijuana and shrooms, and what they call pink cocaine, which is a combination of different drugs, and yeah, ecstasy and cocaine. Jesus, but what I tell you, man, people are wild, man. They, oh my goodness. So yeah, this thing, I just think, B, this is gonna get, we're gonna find out some more stuff, I think, and I that saying where there's smoke, there's fire. I don't see this going down well for Diddy, or ending well for him, I should say. Yeah, it wouldn't shock me if he's prosecuted and ends up doing jail time.
It wouldn't shock me either.
Yeah, so I'm going to grab a super chat here from Warawana with a $5 super chat. Says Microsoft is always 5 years ahead of or too early for trends. Then where was their handheld 5 years ago? Never listened to Last Place. Well, we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But B, I'm glad you're on because I got to talk to you about the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, man.
So what do you think, man? You guys are going to draft Caleb Williams.
It looks like it, man. It's not what I wanted to happen. I think they would have been better suited off with keeping JF1 in the Bears uniform, keeping him our starting quarterback, and just allowing him to cook at least one more year. I think he never really had a roster around him. We finally had a decent tight end in Cole Kmet, who was actually putting up numbers with Justin Fields, but there was no receivers that wanted to catch the ball for him. So it's like, he's scrambling around, taking all these hits, and that's why he was forced to run so much. So now, we added DJ Moore last year, and DJ Moore had, a pretty decent season with us. But now you add Keenan Allen on the other side. You got Cole Kmet in the middle. We go get Gerald Everett, which is a great veteran tight end. We go get one of the best running backs in the league. So it's like now we finally putting the offense together, and we're going to get rid of the guy who's way bigger than Caleb Williams, has a bigger arm than Caleb Williams, to replace him with Caleb Williams. Like, and from Caleb Williams' tape last year, like he didn't show me anything that was like special, but everybody's, you know, holding him, high on this pedestal like he's some quarterback god. So I think the reason why they did it is because he's supposed to be this generational talent, and if they would have
Yeah.
passed on him and things didn't work out for him, then they would have made some changes in the front office. And Brian Poles, I mean, from the trade he did last year, flipping that pick and getting DJ Moore and everything else that has come along with that, and just making that move. No, he's turned out to be one of the best GMs. So if he, if this pick works out where Caleb Williams actually steps in and has a decent year, gets the Bears to the playoffs year one, he's gonna look like a genius and kind of lock his job up for the next couple years, because then that'll just allow him to make more moves, continue to improve the defense, improve special teams, things like that, and actually really, turn the ship around for the Bears, because it's been a long time. If you look at the history, we really haven't had like a really good quarterback in a Bears uniform. So, drafting Caleb Williams, if he turns out like I said, you bring in veteran guys, that want to win, and kind of understand that it is a soft rebuild, but when you bring in veteran guys like that at key positions, it makes the rebuild a lot easier, and it can happen a lot quicker. So I'm excited for it. Like I said, this is probably the best offense we've had, and shit, I couldn't tell you, man, since Brandon Marshall, Alshon Jeffrey days. You know what I mean? Like,
you guys have some pieces, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Adding Swift, adding Keenan Allen. Sweat on the other side. Like, we got some pieces. There's definitely some weapons out there, and we can expose a lot of defenses in the league. It definitely puts us in position to make a run for the division title. But it all hinges on Caleb Williams. He has to come in and step right into that position and start racking up some wins. If not, then we're kind of right back where we were at with Justin Fields.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree. Ryan Landis says, okay, BRAP is running a news channel tonight. Traffic and weather up next. Speaking of traffic, though, I just want to say my thoughts and prayers to those families who have lost loved ones with the bridge accident here in Maryland. Many of you know I live in Maryland. Went to university in Baltimore and familiar with the bridge, the Francis Scott Key Bridge that sits over the what's the I forget the name of not the Susquehanna River, but not the Patuxent, but the Patapsco River. The Patapsco River, which feeds into the Baltimore Harbor. I'm sure you saw this be the container ship that ran into the bridge and knocked it down.
Yeah.
It was
absolutely insane, man.
Yeah,
absolutely
just tragic.
People, trying to get home or go to work or wherever, and they kind of have that happen. A fluke accident like that. It's absolutely insane.
Yeah, it's very sad, very tragic, and like I live in Maryland. Nothing really happens in Maryland like this. We're never really on the national news. It's usually Washington D.C. because obviously the federal government's here and the president's here. But I'm actually 45 minutes from Baltimore, 45 minutes from D.C. and it's crazy. And it just again, I just want to say my thoughts and prayers go out to those families who lost loved ones. They are 6 individuals still unaccounted. They're presumed deceased at this point, but yeah, just very sad, very tragic that this happened on Tuesday. Want to grab a super chat here from CPA from I don't know. Is it CPHX38 with the $2 super says sports? Yeah, we are discussing sports, and then we've got JD Gamer with a $5 super chat. Thank you, JD Gamer. Says B. Do you honestly think the Bears are going to win over the Lions this year, or even the resurgent Packers? It's a great question. You guys had a very competitive division.
We will smack them Packers up. The Lions is going to be a good game because you got to understand, like we essentially just traded running backs. David Montgomery, which was my guy. I love David. Had a great year in the Detroit Lions uniform last year. I expected the same production from them next year. They have great offensive line over there. Great offense, period, in Detroit. But I think now, offensively, we at least match up, and the defense is actually coming along. So I think the Lions Bears games, those are going to be some really good games, especially if Caleb Williams is anything that people are saying that he is.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, you guys, again, you guys have some talent on the offensive side of the ball. I think if Caleb comes in, I don't think he needs to do anything spectacular per se. I think he just needs to manage the game well, make plays when he needs to. You guys have a decent running back. They can run the ball, take a little bit of pressure off him. He's got some targets. He's got some wide receivers. We know that. You guys torched us. You guys torched the Commanders. Is that Monday Night Football or Sunday Night Football? I forget. But you guys torched us. It was bad.
Yeah, I think it was Monday night.
Yeah, it wasn't even close. It was bad. So, but yeah, enough of sports. We'll go to video. This does sound like Ryan's right. This does sound like the newscast, right? I'm not gonna. But. All right, B. So look, we got people discussing football now in the live chat. Eagles. So B, what have you been playing, man, in terms of games recently?
I've been playing a lot of Battlefield 2042. Season 7 just dropped.
Okay.
So I've been playing a lot of that. Just kind of working through the battle pass, trying to get my hours in because I kind of set it down for a while. Really wasn't playing too many shooters. I was trying to catch up on a lot of RPG stuff and JRPGs that I kind of had in the backlog. Finished up Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, which came out earlier this year, and I ran through Final Fantasy VII Remake and playing through Integrate right now before I hop on Rebirth. So I just needed something to kind of break that up, and with season 7 dropping, it was like the perfect time to hop in there and check out the new map and just kind of get back into the mode of playing a shooter. So that's mostly what I've been playing. I'm in the second chapter of Integrate, so I'll be finishing it up probably this week and finally starting Rebirth. I know a lot of people have already finished the game and whatnot, but I wanted to replay Remake again before I hopped in, so did that, and looking forward to playing Rebirth. I've heard a lot of great things. A lot of people really happy with what they did with the sequel, so looking forward to that. What about you?
Yeah, I'm actually playing Rebirth. It's funny you mentioned that because it's I'm really enjoying it. It is probably going to be one of those games that I put up for my own personal game of the year. I'm sure there will be others, but this one is one of the best games that I've played. I know it's early in the year, so for me to say it's one of the best games I played this year, I mean it is. I mean it's, and I would say it's one of the best games I played in the last 6 months. It's a really great story. I sometimes I often think that it's when you have a cast of characters, it's not always an easy execution to make those characters interesting and to have that kind of good flow between the characters and dialogue and make it seem seamless and fun. And that's actually one of the things that I loved about Baldur's Gate 3. Yeah. You have very great characters, great dialogue. Each character has their own unique personality. And and playing when you switch characters in Baldur's Gate 3 of the party, it's just fun to play with them, and it's just a great. There's just sense of camaraderie and companionship, and you get a lot of those things in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Now, I'm also there's a little bit of nostalgia with me too with Final Fantasy VII because it's one of those iconic franchises or games, I should say, from the PlayStation 1 generation, or really for me at least, put the first PlayStation on the map.
All right.
One of the games that did that. And so there's that nostalgia factor for me too. I take that into consideration, but I'm loving it. I think it's a great game. I didn't think that I'd be a big fan of some of the mini games, but Queen's Blood, I've spent a lot of time playing Queen's Blood, and I'm not someone who typically plays mini games. I had this conversation with Forte earlier in the week on Monday, but Queen's Blood's a lot of fun, and I could see that kind of like with what CD Projekt Red did with Gwent. Would it surprise me if Square Enix released a mobile game, mobile version of Queen's Blood? Because it's I've spent an hour and a half just playing Queen's Blood, and I've had to tell myself, wait, I need to get back to progressing the story here. So, but I'm enjoying it. It's a great game.
So, I got a question in regards to where you think, how do you feel they should progress with the next Final Fantasy game? Did you prefer the Final Fantasy 16 route, or it was just like a single player, or would you prefer them to go back to the party system?
It's a great question. I like the party system because that's always been Final Fantasy to me.
Right.
And I'm not saying that I didn't like 16, though. I like Clive as a character. 16 was more of obviously it had RPG elements in it, but it was more kind of an action adventure, kind of like a Devil May Cry. And to no surprise, the individual worked on the combat devil of Final Fantasy 16 worked on Devil May Cry, but I do like the part, because that's how I grew up playing Final Fantasy, right? B. So I like the party system. I like for them to go back to the party system, but if they're gonna do it, it's got to see. Here's the thing, like the party system, the characters are so good in Final Fantasy VII. The characters in Final Fantasy 15 were just like a bit generic boy band to me, boy bandish.
Yeah,
I just didn't really care for Noctis.
Right.
I don't know. Like those characters just didn't really resonate with me in 15.
And it kind of sucked how they set it up because they all kind of just joined at the same time.
Yeah.
It wasn't like traditional Final Fantasy where you kind of you meet them and then one person joins and then, you meet the next character and then they eventually join your party or whatever. It was just here you go. This is your crew. And you just rock with them the whole game, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I like the party system, but you got to have good characters though. And I just didn't the characters of 15 just really didn't resonate with me. And there's some bias here, B, because I know the backgrounds of the characters in Final Fantasy VII, having played it 20 something odd years ago.
Right, right.
I know who Cloud is. I know who Barrett is. I know who Aerith is. I know Tifa. But there. I think the dialogue and the interaction between Tifa and Cloud and Aerith and Barrett and Cloud and Barrett and the entire party. It's done very well. So that's a great question, B. I don't know, man. I didn't as playing only as Clive, I didn't mind it as much because I thought the combat was pretty good.
Right.
I thought I had a decent story. There were certainly some plot twists with Final Fantasy 16 that I didn't see coming. So I don't know, man. It's a great question. I don't know. If they, I think if they make some characters that I can relate to that are that that have good dialogue, that have good chemistry with one another, then yeah, then I would like to see that. But and I even wonder too, B, if they're going to start, if they're looking at maybe other Final Fantasies, and if they're going to if we're going to see like if we're going to see two type of Final Fantasies, we're going to get I wonder if we're going to get more remakes of other Final Fantasies, like 8 or 9. Or
Well, we know 9 is coming.
Well, 9 is coming.
That was in the leak.
Yeah, that's in the leak.
We just don't know how far in depth they're going to do it.
Yeah.
I hope they keep the same the fantastical art style of 9.
Yes.
I want it to be the same exact way it is as far as how it looks. Just update it.
Yeah. I mean, and then yeah, go ahead, man.
As long as they don't do anything crazy with it, I think 9 is perfect for a remake. But as far as what they do in the future, I hope they do go back to the party system. Mm-hmm. I think that's probably like you said, that's what we know Final Fantasy to be. And I think that just allows them to tell a better story, in my opinion.
Yeah. No,
when you have
a
bunch of different characters and they kind of intertwine, and there's different little branching stories, and it all together. I think have
yeah. You know what I was thinking though, when I brought up the remakes, I wonder if they're going to do remakes, and the remakes are going to be the Final Fantasies are going to be the games that we have the party system, and the newer Final Fantasies are going to be more like 16.
16.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering if that.
Yeah,
if they,
I could see that happening because I always say we complain about all these remakes and whatnot, but we have to understand that a lot of these games are for this current generation, you know what I mean? Or the people who came after our generation who didn't play those games, or wouldn't go back to play those games because of the way they look or how they play. So them, bringing them, forth and remaking them, updating the gameplay, making them look like, today's standard as far as how the game looks and runs and functions. That allows another generation to tap in, while also allowing us to, still enjoy games that we grew up with. And then, if they continue to make, the games like 16, that's more of, what the kids are looking for today. A lot of these kids, they don't care about RPGs like that. You know what I mean? They just want to play something. They can be flashy, have fun, progress through the story, and move on.
Yeah. You know what remake I would like to see after 9 is Final Fantasy X with Titus and company.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, that would be cool.
That would probably be like a 2030 something project. You know what I mean? Somewhere in the 2030s.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how soon we're gonna get 9, because that was in that NVIDIA leak. And they still haven't made any mention of it. And the Final Fantasy Tactics remake was in there as well. So and we still haven't seen that either. So I don't know if they're gonna wait until they finish this trilogy and then kind of move on to that next, while intermixing whatever the next Final Fantasy game is. Because traditionally we would, at this point, we would probably be looking at another MMO, but 14 is still going, and they're still adding stuff to it. I don't know if they're gonna do an MMO right away.
Yeah, what's interesting? We're talking about Final Fantasy 9. There's an article, IGN, Yoshi P, who's the director of Final Fantasy 14. They announced that that they are releasing Final Fantasy IX themed extras for the collector's edition, digital collector's edition of Final Fantasy XIV expansion Dawn Trail, including Final Fantasy IX's Arc Summon as a Final Fantasy XIV mount and wind up Princess Garnet as a Final Fantasy XIV. What happened here? That just changed on me. Hold on. Mount and wind up Princess Garnet minion, and if you pre-order Down Trail, you get a wind up Zidane minion. Zidane is a protagonist of Final Fantasy IX, and Yoshi P said you may have noticed a lot of Final Fantasy IX references here, but the reason is a secret. So, I mean, like,
yeah. See, so it's coming. It's coming.
Yeah, so it sounds like
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, me too. I would definitely look forward to it. But look, again, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, love it, having a blast. Love the combat, love the adventure, love the mini games. And this game, I wouldn't be surprised if it's in the conversation for Game of the Year for 2024. One of the games nominated for Game of the Year 2024. So, real quick, I want to introduce Game Logic. Logic, what's going on, man?
Look, man, I constantly preach this thing about, nobody owns stuff, right? Like you can be a fan of Spider-Man, be a fan of the X-Men, be a fan of whatever, right? Game of Thrones, which, what's that man's name? Witchcrafter, Witcher, whatever, Henry Cavill.
The Witcher. You're talking about, plays Geralt.
Yeah, look.
The Witcher.
Yeah. And look, you can love stuff, but nobody owns stuff, right? Nobody owns Blade. Right, like those are the properties of the companies. They can do whatever they want with them. But I'm gonna say, I think I've in all the years of my life, I think I've hit the day where it's finally too far. Because remaking Good Times, like I don't think that's permitted.
Yo,
did you say remaking Good Times?
I was so disgusted when I saw that trailer.
Wait, they're remaking Good Times?
I wanted to go crazy. Netflix
as a cartoon.
Yeah.
Wait, as a cartoon?
Yeah,
it's disgusting. Absolutely disgusting.
Hold on, I need to look this up. Good Times animated. Here we go. What am I looking at here? Netflix Good Times trailer. Oh boy. What? Go ahead, B. You were saying you're disappointed in this trailer.
Absolutely. I would not be supporting that nonsense.
Yeah. Why? I'm just curious. Why the choice to make it an animated adaptation of Good Times?
Cheaper.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess what's next? The Jeffersons? I don't know. I have to watch.
That's like a really good point. Like once you break the seal, with Good Times, then
what's next?
Jeffersons, Sanford and Son.
Can you imagine Sanford and Son as a cartoon?
I can't. I don't think there's somewhere there's some regulation or a law. I'm gonna have to call Lena Khan. like this can't stand.
I gotta watch the trailer. I just saw screenshots. I'm trying to wrap my mind. I mean, I grew up watching Good Times, so I'm trying to wrap my mind around an animated version of Good Times.
It's nothing like Good Times. That's
I'm
the
sure
problem.
It's nothing. Yeah, I'm sure it's nothing like Good Times. Yeah, some of the live chat says Family Matters is next. I can feel it. You know what, Logic? Nothing's off the table.
227.
Oh man,
Benson.
Oh, not Benson.
Oh man,
they can't touch Benson.
Could they? The Cosby Show.
Oh,
they could do that because if they do the Cosby Show, they're gonna cancel Bill, so it won't even be called the Cosby Show.
No.
Different strokes.
It'd be called the Huxtables.
Yeah. Different strokes. Webster.
Oh, not Webster.
Look, man, I'm gonna go to sleep in the fetal position tonight, man. This is.
I had no idea that this was a thing. I thought you guys were joking, and this is gonna be on Netflix, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh wow! All right. Well,
although I guess at least by them doing that, they'll be foot stomping my point, which is that exclusives matter. Netflix will be the only place you can watch The Jeffersons, or Good Times.
Oh my goodness! All right, Logic. What are you playing right now, sir? We were just talking about. I know we just rambled on about Final Fantasy.
Whew, man. I am playing. So I'm playing a little bit of the Sega Genesis arcade on Nintendo Switch Online. So I was playing Alien Storm tonight, which I don't even remember. I was really surprised when I went to look it up that this game apparently got ported to both the Genesis and it didn't come out until 1990. And it was ported to both the Genesis and the Master System. And I would have thought the Master System would have been way off the board by that time. But yeah, it's a little kind of 2D side scroller. It's actually kind of very interesting because the other thing I'm playing is Golden Axe 2, and the combat is kind of a little similar, just from a 2D perspective of giving you some kind of dodge options instead of just the normal kind of beat 'em up 2D side scroller. So those things back in their time were certainly considered innovative. But like I said, also sorry, just give me 1 second.
Man, Golden Axe. Golden Axe brings so many great memories, man.
Yeah. For some reason, I don't remember it as fondly as a lot of other people do. But I also may get that feeling mixed up with Altered Beast. Maybe Altered Beast was the one that I felt was overhyped beyond what it really was. But Golden Axe 2 also had some kind of neat innovations in just movement and breaking out of just that kind of walking from left to right, giving you the ability to jump, pull off some aerial attacks, grab and throw your enemies. The kind of the super that you had allotted, which Alien Storm did as well. So I've been playing those on the Nintendo Switch LCD in handheld mode. Also been playing Kingdom Rush on the iPad because what I've been told is that the future is mobile, and games being on every screen. So I've been wanting to make sure I spend some time with all my devices that you can game on. So Kingdom Rush is a tower defense game, which actually back in the day when I thought mobile was still kind of exciting and interesting, I used to play a lot of tower defense games. So I went off and kind of researched what were the best tower defense games. My preferred one was Field Runners from back in the day, but just kind of went looking for kind of how those things were ranked now, and I think Kingdom Rush is ranked pretty highly. So it's pretty neat. It's got so I think you guys are familiar with the standard tower defense formula, but it has a store where you can go in and buy power-ups, which then, or just go kind of in your, and then you buy them with in-game currency, right, that you earn during missions. And then you're able to buy power-ups that then you can utilize right on the battlefield whenever you so choose on the game. You unlock heroes as you proceed through missions and campaigns. I do not know what is behind the formula for when you unlock heroes. But the heroes are kind of interesting because they'll have different abilities, but it kind of also results in them being needing to be managed differently. So like the first hero you unlock is like a paladin, so he's kind of like a tank, and so you can he's not really great. He's not really as great offensively, I think, as much as he is a defensive character with kind of high endurance. So you can kind of put him in choke points and use him to just kind of beat away at like the larger enemies. Some of the big, you kind of have like big hulking enemies come through right in the later waves of each mission. But then you like the second hero you unlock, I can't remember what her name is, but she's like an archer. So she's really powerful with her ranged attacks, but you really have to position her appropriately, near a choke point, but not in it, because you don't want her getting attacked because she gets easily overwhelmed. But you want to position her somewhere where she can, fire weapons as like an additional artillery tower particularly if you don't have enough artillery towers in that area. And then it has a skill tree. So as you proceed through the campaigns, you earn stars, and then you can utilize those stars to unlock additional capabilities that, increase your or like decrease your power for like upgrading like your magic towers and increasing the range of your artillery shots and things like that. So it's, I mean, on mobile devices, on tablets, it's tower defenses are kind of the equivalent or substitute for RTSs, on PC. So they're a lot of fun. And like I said, I've been playing that on my iPad Pro 11. And then the last thing I've been playing is Grid Autosport. I've also been playing that on the Nintendo Switch, but I've been playing that at home with the Switch in docked mode. Otacon kind of asked me on Twitter today, and Grid. I mean, Grid has been around for a long time. It's by what was one of my favorite Autosports vehicle sim studios, Codemasters. It came out back in the first one came out back in Gen 6 on the Xbox 360. I think it was also on the PlayStation 3. And since then they've done Grid 2, Grid Autosport. They've rebooted the franchise. So it's got several different iterations. Grid Autosport has been ported to 8 different platforms. So I think it's been on 2 different generations of console, and then now is on mobile as well. And then another version on the Nintendo Switch. Amazingly, they were able to do all of that in an industry where exclusives are allowed and permitted and are okay. There was no need for this revolutionary change in the industry where exclusives went away. According to the desires of Phil Spencer, to allow people to put their games on multiple platforms. Somehow Codemasters figured out how to do that without some revolutionary change in the industry. So
yeah.
But yeah, I've been playing that on Nintendo Switch. It doesn't, on Switch it doesn't have the Pro controller, or at least the implementation on the Switch doesn't have the granularity of kind of control from utilizing the triggers and stuff like that. But it's kind of neat. It's a big survey sim with a lot of different cars, but I think the neatest thing about it is the different modes that it has they're not unique, but they're not common modes that you see like in a lot of other racing games. Like it has an endurance mode, which is an 8-minute race, where it's not just necessarily by position on the track, but it's by distance traveled, and then tire endurance is tracked, so you have to balance, kind of pushing it hard in corners and trying to move up in position at the expense of tire wear, because as the race goes on, right, you get down to a point where you're probably going to be at like 25% tire wear, and you're not going to be able to corner as precisely as you were. So things like that make it a pretty interesting racing game. So yeah, that's what I've been up to this last week and a half or so.
No, that's awesome, man. All right, I do want to move on to some news that came out of GDC. Our good friend Christopher Dring, I say good friend, we've never had him on the show, but I'm working on getting him on the show. Who, if you guys aren't listening, I say this every week. Every week I say this. Go to GameIndustry.biz to get your video game news. They're one of the last great bastions of gaming journalism. And they also have a podcast called the Game Industry Microcast, which if you're not watching that, you should. Christopher Dring was on there and was discussing some of the things he was hearing out of last week's GDC, the Game Developers Conference held in San Francisco, California. And one of the things that came up was the PlayStation 5 Pro. He said that But I'll just read the quote here. I'll be honest, I didn't meet a single person that understood the point of PlayStation 5 Pro. Christopher Dring also said that, also claimed that developers didn't seem, developers in the microcast, he said developers didn't seem to feel they need it because they weren't really making the most of the PS5 in the first place. So this is kind of, I mean, is anyone here surprised by developers saying, "Hey, we don't necessarily think we don't really understand the point of a PS5 Pro"? I could certainly understand the idea of maybe not getting all the juice out of the PlayStation 5. I think, as at least what I've seen from previous generations, that tends to happen towards the latter part of the generation. We're kind of at the midway point here. But what are you guys' thoughts about this? About the things that Chris String is hearing about PS5 Pro coming out of GDC?
Hey.
Slow-mo!
Can people hear me?
Yes.
I was like, I got quiet, and I was just like, I don't know if I can be heard or not. All right. Hey, what's up, man?
What's going on, man? Welcome, Slow-mo. It's great to have you. Great to see you. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
Yeah, so I don't know, Slow-mo, if you want to tackle this question. I just threw this out to the panel.
Yeah, I'll do it. Look, I don't know why people act like the PlayStation 5 is like a set of tires. Hey, these tires still got some tread on them. We can go a few more miles before we replace them. No, it's a piece of hardware with outdated CPU. And as the time goes on and games become more complex, that CPU will be further exposed. And I mean, the Pro doesn't really do much for that anyway. But I do understand where if you have a game that isn't CPU bound, and yet these games are struggling to maintain 60 frames per second in performance mode, but here is an option where you get that performance mode and it may actually be a locked 60 frames per second. Is it going to be for everybody? Absolutely not. If you already own the PlayStation 5, I do not think you need this, although there will be people who would get it anyway, who will upgrade to it anyway. But if you're interested in getting a PS5 later in the generation, you probably want to go get this one instead of the regular PS5. It makes sense to me. Now, from a developer standpoint, sure, maybe they're just like, well, for our game, with the engine that we're using and the game design that we got set forth and the game that we're developing for, we have no need for this other device. But it could just very much be, we don't feel like having to create a different build for a different SKU. The same, things that people were saying about the Xbox Series X and S, that we don't want to have to do all this additional work. And I get that as well. It could just very much be they ain't really trying to deal with this right now. We already got 3 different SKUs of console games that we're putting. 3 different SKUs of consoles that we're putting our game out on. Now it's 4. So thanks a lot. So I really don't think when they're talking about, well, who is this for, that they're really speaking about the customer, because you can find a demographic that this is for, but from a developer standpoint, it does nothing for them, but give them more work.
What are your thoughts, B Money? Yeah, no. No, what are your thoughts, B? I know we had kind of briefly talked about this on Twitter, but what are your thoughts, B, on some of the feedback here? Because I think you had mentioned that, yeah, you could. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you were leaning towards, like, at least the understanding of, okay, like, I can understand why developers have that perspective. We haven't seen games necessarily running or being as well optimized as maybe they could be. Is that kind of where your thought process with this news coming out of GDC?
Yeah, I mean, you see devs come out and say like, oh, well, we haven't tapped in and we're not fully utilizing the PS5. So why aren't you? If that's the case, question. Why aren't you? If you're saying that you haven't tapped into the device and are fully utilizing what's available on the device, then why aren't you? Why are games struggling? Is it- Almost every other week there's a game that's struggling on this hardware. There's a game that's supposed to be in performance mode, supposed to be running at 60 frames, and it's not. Now, all these games aren't CPU bound. The ones that are, perfectly understandable. It's happening across PC and console, so that's totally understandable. But when they're not, and the game is still running like shit, what's the problem? That's where I'm coming at it from, because like you can say like, oh, you know, we don't need this device or this, you know, who really wants this? First of all, there's going to be market. There's a market for everything. There's people who drive $500,000 cars. Who's that for? The people who have the money to go out and buy it. Same thing with this. There's people who buy $1,200 GPUs. They have $4,000 PCs.
Slow mo.
You know what I mean? Like,
hey! My PC's not 4,000.
There's a market for everything. So, you know, the hardcore fan, the people who are technically sound, they're gonna go out and buy this. They refuse to be on PC. They're not gonna buy a PC. The same way that we always say like PC gamers aren't buying a console. There's console gamers that aren't buying a PC either. But they want to have the latest and greatest in the console form. So, yes, they're going to go out and buy it. You know, we finally found out that the PS4 Pro actually did pretty well. You know, it wasn't, you know, something that just sold like 10 million units, but it was closer to 20. So, you know, there is a market for it, and people will go out and buy it. And, you know, the developers who are saying that it's not needed, then fully utilize the device that's there, and then the console would be null and void. But that's not what we're seeing. We're seeing games still being released on past generation. We're seeing games that are exclusive to this generation, and they're running like shit. So I know, you know, they're getting a lot of pressure from the publishers, and they got to hit certain dates, and the games got to come out, and they're gonna release patches, and it takes a year before the games are good, i.e., Jedi Survivor, i.e., Cyberpunk. There's got to be a solution. Either we fully utilize the console that we have, or this is going to continue to happen.
Yeah, B, one of the things Christopher Dring brought up too, I thought was kind of an interesting point, was in the GI Microcast, the Game Industry.biz podcast, he did say this generation doesn't even seem to have got started, let alone needs a mid-generation upgrade. I think it's an interesting perspective from Chris, in the sense that I think, and I don't necessarily disagree there, because I kind of feel like COVID kind of threw a wrench in this generation. You know, I mean, you know, Sony came out the gate pretty strong, but I just feel like this, if I think about other generations, this one's moved a little bit slower, I think. And to your point, where we see other games being ported or also, ported for the last generation. That could be also the fact that people haven't.
As far as like moving slower.
I just feel like people haven't upgraded consoles like I think they've done in previous years. And I think that in part, like to your point with developers releasing games on other, last gen platforms, that's still a thing. I just feel like COVID it just is my optics. I just feel like COVID it was kind of led to kind of a slow start. You know, it hurt, impacted the supply chain. There weren't enough consoles on the market. I say consoles, but the current gen consoles. And now I feel like things are really starting to kind of pick up a little bit more now that there's more supply. People are buying or have access to buy PlayStation 5s or even Xbox Series X consoles now, compared to like the first year, 2 years of this generation, because of the impact of the supply chain because of COVID.
And I can understand that and kind of see that perspective. But if the PS5 is selling more than the PS4 was at the same time period, and I mean, that's not really the case. I think the biggest issue is that during the last generation, we got all of these big games as a service that people don't need to upgrade their console for. People are still playing Fortnite on PS4. People are still playing GTA Online on PS4. People are still playing Rainbow Six Siege on PS4. All these big games that people invest all their time and money into, they're still available on a console. There was nothing that pushed them or forced them to say, hey, you need to buy the next console. It was like, all right, well, I'm still getting the same updates. My game still runs. My console still turns on. Why do I need to move? Why do I need to get this upgraded box? $500, I'm still playing the same game. I'm still playing Fortnite every day. I'm still playing Warzone every day. I'm still playing all these games that I play. And I don't need to spend $500 to do the same thing that I'm already doing. That's the biggest problem, is that during the last generation, games as a service popped off. And that's where, we always talk about the kids playing on iPads and iPhones and all this nonsense. No, that's not what they're playing. These kids are playing Roblox. These kids are playing Fortnite. These kids are playing all these games as service games, and they don't need to move to another console to do that because those games are still available. That transition from generations that we are used to having, where we're waiting for the next God, for the next. I just don't care. Buy those softer sales than they did last generation. They don't care. I come home. When I got home from work today, my 7-year-old son is playing with my 17-year-old son. They're playing Fortnite, Floor is Lava. My other son is getting home. He's playing Destiny 2. Yeah, tracked me today. So as soon as he gets home, he takes a shower, whatnot, ate dinner. He hopped on Destiny 2. Like, and the only reason they have new consoles is because I bought them new consoles. Because I upgraded. I'm upgrading the whole house. But they were perfectly fine still playing on PS4. The games that they play are still there. So they didn't need a new console to play those games. They upgraded because I upgraded all the boxes in the house. But these kids are not moving on. They don't. If you look at all the games from this past generation, there's only a few standout games that really sell. A lot of these games are not selling at all. People do not care about these games, and that's the biggest problem with the industry right now. We're releasing too many games, and not enough people are buying them, and not enough people care. Because the vast majority of people are playing Roblox, Fortnite, Rainbow Six Siege. They're playing those big games, and they don't need to have a new console to do that, and they don't care about these other games that are releasing.
Yeah, it's interesting. You brought up GTA. I wonder if GTA 6 will be kind of the tipping point for people who are still obviously still playing that game, the last gen consoles. But I do want to go to Logic here. Logic, what are your thoughts about what Chris heard at GDC about PlayStation 5 Pro?
Nothing burger. And I think this is one of these great instances where something like this gets mentioned, and there's no reflecting or looking back at what happened the last time. So one of the things is that we've heard nothing official about a PS5 Pro. Right? Cerny hasn't come out and briefed what is going in the PS5 Pro. We haven't been talked about what its features are. And a big hoop that went down last time is a lot of what came along with the PS4 Pro was an enablement through software, right? Patches that gave you acceleration and PS4 Pro enhancements that were automatically applied to games that ran on the PS4 and gave those games a lift and an improved experience. Sometimes without devs doing much of anything. I think another big note is that, you know, who is the from a developer perspective, who is the PlayStation 5 Pro for? It's not for you third-party yokels, who I'm pretty sure are the people who made the comment, right? It's really for the first-party PlayStation studios. They're the ones who are going to get the most advantage out of it. The last time when the PlayStation 4 Pro came out, the developers at Bend and the developers at Sucker Punch had people working on PS4 Pro patches for their games. They had like one developer working on updates for even a game that was in pipeline. So what it gave them a significant lift with very little effort put into it. Right? We're always talking about, you know, is the juice worth the squeeze? This is one of those upside down instances where there isn't much squeeze that needs to be applied to get some extra juice out of it. And at the end of the day, what does it do? It winds up having the capability to deliver better PlayStation 5 games. I don't really know, and I think, you know, I've mentioned it before, the concept or the question or the perception of this being for people to upgrade. I don't think Sony's that concerned about people upgrading, and I don't think from a consumer perspective, this is something you really look at and worry about upgrading. I think kind of like Slow-Mo was saying, like this is the thing where, you know, if you're going to walk into a store now-ish or whenever this thing comes out, because you haven't upgraded to a PlayStation 5 Pro, to a PlayStation 5 yet, then you consider getting the 5 Pro. I mean, and what does it give you? It gives you additional overhead. It gives developers additional space. It gives developers extra tuning overhead, so that when they're trying to crank as much as they can into the resources that are available, they've got additional resources. We don't know how much overhead that is right now. Last time we knew the delta between the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 4 Pro, I hate to use teraflops, but we'll just use it. It was 1.84 teraflops on the PlayStation 4 to 4.2 teraflops on the PlayStation 4 Pro. Sorry if I said Pro twice. Right, so it was a significant update. Now, back then, there were additional things that they had to contend with. First of all, as far as I understand, and Slow, you can correct me if I'm wrong, like, PlayStation 5 is still upscaling. So we're still getting games on the PlayStation 5 that are not running at native 4K.
Yeah.
So, I mean, again, you know, what is the PlayStation 5 Pro for? It's for doing anything that the PlayStation 5 isn't doing today. And
that is also still going to be upscaling as well, but it'll be upscaling with a proprietary upscaler that Sony, the pisser.
The pisser.
You know, it's going to be using the pisser to I guess, piss you some better looking games.
Some extra frames.
Oh no.
I mean, I don't know. Look, man. I'm trying to make it work. It's a terrible. It's. I don't think they thought that one through. But it's the pisser. It's gonna be the pisser forever now. It is what it is. But regardless, right? I guarantee that's going to be a pro exclusive. Like, you're not going to get pisser on PS5 regular. You want pisser, you better get yourself a Pro. And that's like, I understand, you know, kind of locking things off. It's a very NVIDIA kind of thing, right? NVIDIA does that, where we're like, hey, you know, we got DLSS, but if you want the good DLSS, you better go get yourself the latest overpriced GPU that we just dropped, because that's where that's exclusive at. You want frame generation, you better come over here for that. And so that's kind of how that works. And if it is good as advertised by people who are, you know, saying behind the scenes, it's taking a 1080p image, upscaling to 4K, and it's not artifacting, it's not ghosting, as we see with a lot of really trash upscalers, high AMD with FSR, you know, then hey, that's even better. And that's really going to be where developers can say, oh, what? Now I do see what the point was, because instead of waiting for AMD to properly get their upscaler done, they went and created their own with slightly better hardware than what they're currently working with. We can probably hit some of those benchmarks that we somehow weren't able to do. And is that their fault for not really optimizing their games well? Well, yeah. Like they keep releasing unfinished games. We see this all the time. They keep releasing games that needed another like 3 or 4 months to really cook. And I'm not saying this is a shortcut, but if you provide more tools for them to be able to use, and there is a streamlined way for them to implement them in their game, then here we are. So go Pisser.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that has to do with, and granted, Xbox didn't do it with hardware; they did it with business model stuff and with acquisitions. But I also feel like this is part of a coiling up, right, for the next generation, right? This is to soften the on ramp into whatever, right, is the Gen 10 box. Get Pisser out on the street, get people to use it, gain familiarity with it, work out the kinks, burn down the technical debt, and then you have a more refined abstraction layer tool, technology method for utilization on the GPU next time around. And I'm pretty sure that they also, kind of like Slow-Mo mentioned, right? If there's a notion of exclusivity, I don't necessarily know if it's going to be required for every PlayStation game in the future. If they keep it as something that's optional, if they keep it as something that rides along with FSR, right? So for third-party publishers, you could say, look, you can bring your game to PlayStation 6 and it can utilize FSR. That's fine. But here's Pisser, and it's better. But if you want to use it, right, that licensing cost, that part of the SDK, right, that's an extra. Maybe something that goes in their B2B relationship. But it's also, what it looks like too is it looks like them, loosening up their dependency on AMD from at least a small perspective. And, we've seen that take place in other industries. Apple reduced their dependency on Google, and Samsung reduced their dependency on Google by rolling their own services or plugins or components of a larger industry architecture. So it'll be interesting to see how it comes out. And I think the last thing is the other thing. The other reason PlayStation has did this before and is doing it now is to give themselves breathing room away from the rest of the market. If it's a no-brainer and it's not a big impact to them, it's a product differentiator. You've got Switch 2 coming out on the street next, which is not going to obviously be a PlayStation 5, but again, it just gives them a SKU that's out on the street that gives them that much more headroom ahead of whatever Nintendo is coming out with next. And not knowing what Xbox is going to do, and again, Xbox's relevance from a competitive perspective may not be huge, but the point is that when you're winning, right, you don't stop running the ball, and this is just them continuing to run the ball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, great points all around, gentlemen. I do want to move on to, now I got that stuck in my head now, Pisser. And you know what? That's what everyone's calling it that, by the way. I've heard a couple other podcasts refer to it as Pisser. Yeah, actually, interesting point about the licensing to that. It's just another way for Sony to make some additional cash, some additional coin through licensing of Pisser. But
because Totoki said,
yeah. I do want to move on to, and actually this kind of ties in. Thank you, JD, for this super chat that I'll read here in just a second, because this is kind of a segue here. Phil Spencer wants Epic Game Store and others on Xbox consoles. So this is on an interview that he had with Polygon. And Phil Spencer says, considering our history as the Windows company, nobody would blink twice if I said, hey, when you're using a PC, you get to decide the type of experience you have by picking where to buy games. There's real value in that. And so he believes that that having like an Epic Store would potentially create that value. So he also talked about the subsidization of console hardware where he says subsidizing hardware becomes more challenging in today's world. And I will say, and this may seem too altruistic. Where have I heard altruistic before? I don't know I don't know that it's growing the industry. So I think, what are the barriers? What are the things that create friction in today's world for creators and players? And how can we be part of opening that model? This very much is a Phil Spencer-ish type of interview, and many of the talking points he's mentioned before. He went on to say, if I want to play on a gaming PC, then I feel like I'm more a continuous part of a gaming ecosystem as a whole, as opposed to on console. My gaming is kind of sharded, to use a gaming term, based on these different closed ecosystems that I have to play across. So those are some of Phil's comments. Now, I've heard things like the next Xbox could be a situation where, and Hip Hop Gamer did a video about this back in maybe February, January, where he had talked about an Xbox having a Windows mode, and that Windows mode would allow you to have access to things like basically function like a PC, where you would have access to like an Epic storefront, and then an Xbox mode where you would have it function as your Xbox console. You'd have the UI, the dashboard, that whole Xbox experience there. And I was talking to someone else this week, and I heard the same thing. So, kind of an interesting. We'll see if this ends up being true, but kind of interesting that Phil again is kind of talking about, the lack of growth in the console space, and kind of opening up the platform and allowing people to purchase games on different storefronts. Really, this idea of the console becoming more like PC. And I really do think Phil's dropping nuggets here. I think basically what he's saying is the next Xbox is probably going to be more PC than it is traditional home console. But I do want to go to JD Gamer's super chat here, which kind of ties into this conversation, or this particular topic. JD Gamer, the $20 super chat, says, question for the panel: what happens to the PS5 Pro if they announce its official specs and the next day Microsoft announced the rumored next-gen handheld hybrid console that's more powerful and has Epic, Steam, game stores too? So
same thing that's happening right now.
Yeah, basically that's because that's not really their problem. Their problem isn't power, but I highly doubt that this hybrid handheld console is going to be more powerful than the PS5 Pro. And that's because depending on how they do this, maybe they put like an eGPU inside of the dock. It'll be a pretty beefy dock. Pause. No Diddy. To actually kind of do that.
Come on, man.
I had to throw a no Diddy in there.
I thought you were saying no Meek Mill, but go ahead.
But like the big thing when it comes to handhelds is power draw, because you have a battery and you can make it super powerful, and even try to make it super powerful in a small form factor and figure out the cooling so that you don't basically burn out your components too soon, and it don't last that long. But even with all that, your battery is a big problem. And I mean, this is the reason why what's important for a lot of these PC handhelds is the level of quality that you can get out of frame rates and visuals with a low TDP. You need to make sure that the power is making it so the battery lasts long enough for you to actually enjoy what you're looking and playing. And all that said, like, these handhelds are not doing like crazy. They're doing better than the Switch, of course, but they're not doing better than even the Xbox Series S. So you have to take that into account. And what this handheld would do in handheld mode is going to be less than what you're getting from the PS5 right now. And it's kind of up in the air on what it will be capable of doing when it's docked. Again, like if they got an GPU in there, it's potentially could probably be on par with the PS5 right now. But like, I don't know for certain what's going to be in there.
I mean, not at low cost. I mean,
Yeah, that's gonna be really expensive.
yeah, because I mean, you lose bandwidth going across that externalized bus, and so even at like a 3080 Ti or a super beefy GPU sitting in that eGPU doesn't give you the exact same amount of oomph, right, as you would have if that were sitting inside the box, transiting those bits right across a PCI trace that's that much closer, right, to the CPU. So, I mean, even if they did, I mean, and so that's an incredibly expensive dock that just drives you out of the realm of reasonable market positioning for however you're going to have to price it.
Right. And yeah, look, I mean, the big draw, JD, to this device isn't power. And I think that like they not chasing power no more. Phil Spencer once said, "We'll never lose the power."
Well, not according to Sarah Bond.
Narrative again.
Not according to Sarah Bond. The next Xbox is supposed to be, what did she say? The most powerful console?
No, the biggest technology leap or some stuff like that. Like, who knows exactly what she really meant by that? But you can't really take anything that they say when they're hyping up a new product that hasn't even been announced yet to heart. Like they once said the Xbox Series X would eat monsters for breakfast, and it's struggling in performance mode like the PS5 is. So it's the big draw to this is that you have a handheld that has the kind of games that people who are into PlayStations and Xboxes want. So it's not the Nintendo handheld. It is a handheld that will play GTA 6. It's a handheld that will play the latest Call of Duty, even though the Switch 2 is getting Call of Duty, but we all know it's going to run like doo-doo butter, right? So like we're talking about the kind of games that console gamers like to play with potentially competitive performance docked, while also being something that is viable as a viable handheld with a good battery while it's in handheld mode. And that's the draw to it. That plus having, as Phil Spencer said, Epic Games Store and Steam, that you can just, switch to those. And if you own games under those, then you can play those games too. That's the draw to it. That's its benefits and its positives. It's not power. Power is not going to be what they're going to market this thing for, JD. They're going to market this thing for ease of use.
Yep.
For console gamers that are somewhat interested in PC environment, but not so interested enough that they want to build their own PC or even buy a pre-built. Here you go. Here's an Xbox branded PC handheld that is going to play PC games. What you should be worried about, JD Gamer, is them getting that Microsoft Store and PC ready for this. Because
I mean, here's the thing too: if they put out a handheld, right, their primary handheld competition is going to be the Steam Deck.
Yes, and Steam Deck's got a really, I mean, like Valve doesn't mass produce it the way Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony mass produce their hardware, but as far as experience in this, and as far as having a Steam OS that already works in this, and they got a massive head start in understanding what it takes to build one of these things. And by the time the Xbox handheld comes out, the Steam Deck 2 will be out.
Right.
And then now you're looking at, they could come, maybe that Steam Deck 2 was more powerful than this Xbox handheld. You don't know.
Yeah, I just I don't disagree with you, gentlemen. And to B's point, like I think JD Gamer was asking what would happen. I don't think anything. I don't think anything would change from a market perspective. I kind of feel like Xbox is in this.
Xbox has a problem with Xbox, and that's the problem. Xbox has lost its identity. They don't know who they want to be. They want to be everybody but Xbox, and that's their problem. That's exactly why nobody cares about the brand. I've been saying it for the longest. I've been telling y'all, nobody cares because they don't. They don't even know what they're doing. every other week they're trying to do something else, but be Xbox. Until they clear house, get a new focus, some new ideas in there, some people who know how to market a brand, understand brand power. They're gonna be in the same. This is gonna just be a recycling occurrence. They're gonna keep doing the same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Pete,
and then about 3
B,
years now, they'll have a new initiative.
well, B, I don't
Exactly.
disagree. I don't disagree with you, B. I feel like they're kind of in this weird place now where they're trying to figure out what the next. I mean, I'm sure they have an idea, right? Like I'm sure they're like, this is how we want to pivot. But I feel like there's always some kind of new initiative, some kind of pivot. Phil has these very, utopian views of gaming, which okay, it's fine. Like I don't have an issue with that, but it's interesting. He frames the console market as this market that isn't growing. Now, obviously, like it's a mature market. No one is disputing that, Phil Spencer, but there's still money to be made despite it being a mature market. And if you don't believe me,
It's not growing as far as people buying into consoles, but the spend in console gaming is as high as it's ever been.
yeah, that's where I was going. Yeah, exactly. Like there's still money to be made. The problem is that Xbox hasn't been able to make money. They haven't been able to compete successfully outside of the Xbox 360 generation. So I think when people hear Phil say these things about the console market, well, yes, we're not disagreeing that it isn't a mature market. It absolutely is. But to B's point, and if you look at some of the numbers, the console market still it's growing from a revenue perspective, and
it's a work. Phil has been meeting with Vince McMahon.
oh,
He has learned how to do
Oh man, I hope
not Vince, not Vince.
He has learned. He has learned how to do. He has learned how to do a WWE promo, and that's what he's running around doing right now. It's a work. The console industry grew last year by $6 billion. Microsoft, however, lost revenue.
Yeah.
So I mean,
yeah.
it's a matter of what Xbox's performance profile looks like versus what the rest of the industry is doing. They didn't overperform as highly as the industry norm did during the up year of the pandemic. They trailed behind what the industry norm was. And so there are things that they need to do for them, and like I talked to you about earlier today, from a strategic perspective, right? That I've never had a problem with their strategies, but the big problem that they continue to have, kind of like as Bia said, is they get very lathered up about what are admittedly innovations on the landscape, innovative business models, innovative delivery mechanisms, cloud, right? The acceleration technologies, that they use with Xbox Boost and blah blah blah, right? A lot of Star Trek technobabble, and it's been great, right? But the question of what happens if they come out with a handheld? Okay, so they're going to come out with a handheld that's going to be primarily appealing to their 27 million user install base that they have now. Some of that demographic of which is there because their number one consumer priority is low cost of access. And then you're going to try to convince them to buy another piece of hardware, which maybe they will. But the other problem is for them and for the rest of the world, right? Because remember, this is one of the things I keep preaching. This is an American company, right? Run by Western executives with a Western approach to gaming. And the numbers around the world there are 1.5 billion gamers in Asia. There are 715 or so million in Europe, 400 something, 25 million or whatever in Latin America, and a smaller number in North America. And like Sean Layden said, ask yourself the question, if the rest of the world has proven that they don't want to play Halo, Gears of War, and Forza, are those the games that you're going to continue making? I don't care about putting all that stuff on more screens. They can get to that content on those screens now. They can get to analogous content on those screens now. How are you going to get them content that they want to play? How are you going to get your own addressable market content that they want to play? because we do all these things with like I said, the cloud, the flux capacitor, the transporter, the replicator, accoutrograms all over the place.
Yeah.
Right. But at the end of the day, what continues to not be delivered is great games. And unless you combine the power of all that stuff, all your adjacencies, all your supporting divisions, right, the financial strength, right, of the 2-point-something trillion dollar corporation, until you combine that with figuring out how to deliver great games, that's not going to do anything. Because what I will say is, you can feel however you feel about Starfield and Forza. What I will say without a doubt is Starfield is not the level of title that Bethesda has delivered previously. Forza Motorsport is not the level of title that Turn 10 has delivered previously. Until you fix that problem, then it kind of doesn't matter, right, that you got Zephyr Cochrane overbuilding, the dilithium crystals and the antimatter engine. Like, who cares?
Yeah, Logic, that's what I'm saying. Like, they can do all these things. And all these things, a lot of these things exist. Like, I've talked about this, like this idea of being able to take your games on the go. You can do that now. You can play games on any device now. You can access content via cloud. You can do cross-save, cross-progression. Those things exist now. The issue for them, and I really do believe this, is, for some of the reasons you mentioned, is that they can do all these things, but at the end of the day, like, it comes down to content. You have to put out content that's going to give people a reason to go to your platform. And a lot of their struggles have been just that. And it's spilled over into hardware. We talked about this last week, the hardware sales being down 47% year over year. 47%. They were down 32% the year before in Europe. Now they're down 47% year over year. The Amy Hood has talked about it being a down year in terms of negative growth for the Xbox hardware. So this idea that, and I'm seeing people just run with this without really thinking about what Phil's saying or what the realities of the console market are. And I think it's important to have this conversation and to point out that, yes, again, while we all agree that it's a mature market, it's still a market where there's a lot of money to be made. And who's not having problems making money? Nintendo, Sony. Someone in the live chat said this: how does the company in third place get to dictate the narrative, whatever? And I don't disagree with that comment, but if you don't, but think about this. On one hand, Phil's talking about the console market. There's not a lot of growth, right? But on the other hand, he's also telling you through his actions that, hey, us putting games, our first party games, on rival consoles, that costs money to do. And when he's spending that money and he's bringing those games to the Nintendo Switch and the PlayStation 5, what he's saying through that action is that the juice is worth the squeeze and that there is money to be made in consoles. And that's why we're doing this. He's coming full circle back to consoles, back to the thing he says isn't growing. It's going to help them consoles at the end of the day by releasing their first party content. It's going to help him grow his business. So, want to welcome Gaming Forte here. What's up, Forte?
Yo, what's up, guys? How you guys doing today?
We have the better half of DPS. I'm just joking, Slow-Mo. But what's great to see you, Forte.
It's only one good side of DPS, and it's Slow-Mo.
Oh, that's nice of you to say.
I'm just filler, I'm just filler. No, man, it's been good. I just got back from a oh, never mind. I'm not gonna say that because I might get slandered. But yeah, it's been a good day. Been a good day.
All right. Yeah. So what are your thoughts, Forte? I know you joined it. We're having this conversation about Phil Spencer's interview with Polygon, and we talked about the idea of an Epic storefront on Xbox. What say you, sir?
I mean, what else is new? I mean, at a certain point, you just gotta kind of. It's like Xbox. The problem with Xbox is Xbox. It's not really anything that anybody else can do. It's a content strategy problem. It's it's a two-tier console problem. It's an exclusivity problem. It's more than just one thing. And this is kind of what happens when you kind of have to like scramble because of a lot of decisions that were made over the course of a decade. And people and this should tell people this should basically remind people of that old saying that you can't fix something in a day. It's something that you've been working on, something that's been broken for years ain't gonna get fixed in one day. You gotta do incremental upgrades and changes to the philosophy over years to get to where you need to get to. You don't just gain 100 pounds in weight in one day. You gained it over 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe 8 years. But you ain't gonna lose it in 2 days, and you're not gonna lose it in 1 year. You can make an adjustment in life to make kind of get to where you want to get to and have better habits and stuff. But that's ultimately where Xbox is. I always felt like it started with the fact that I forget who said it, but someone said, Phil came out and said that he wanted Xbox gamers to be treated like first class citizens. And I was like, that was a real interesting, thing that he said, because I feel like Xbox hasn't been treated as a first class citizen inside of Microsoft itself for the majority of its existence inside of Microsoft. So that's something that kind of just materialized over the course of the last, like, say, 10 years, basically. And yeah, they made some inroads and things like that, but it's just the dynamic is completely different now. I was listening to each about, I was listening earlier. Not only generation,
Forte, you're botting really bad.
ridiculously not the one you want to lose due to libraries and stuff, but also it's a generation where a lot of people started up here. Yeah, I know my laptop did some crazy stuff. It was also, not only was last generation the generation where people moved with their digital libraries, it's also the generation where, like B said earlier, games as a service in all of those games kind of got people married up to particular, things that they like to do. I always was telling people about this generation. Like, this generation truly, for a lot of people, hasn't even started yet because they're still stuck on last generation consoles because, like B said, the things that they play, there's no reason for them to move over to anything else because they're still available there. You still play Fortnite here. You can still do all these things there. So that's kind of part of the situation. But when it comes to like just Xbox in general, Phil is going to do what Phil has to do and the things he's going to say, because guess what? There's a lot of things that's changed. Viewpoints have changed. Conversation points have changed. The fact that we're not going to give up on power and we're never going to be, second in power, that's changed. They don't even talk about power anymore. Exclusivity and treating people like, first class citizens, that's changed, because guess what? Xbox is basically telling the Xbox player base that you're not enough. We need to go out and we need to facilitate a bigger player base. And they've been saying that honestly, quietly for years. It's just that people never thought it would get to the point where it was outside of just the console sphere. They thought that PC was going to be the haven, or they thought mobile was going to be the haven. They never thought it would get to the fact that they would actually bridge borders to go to other consoles to do it. But, but when you want to hit that many players, that's how you're going to do it. Even knowing consoles are only, 200 to 250 to 300 million parts of the overall ecosystem of consoles, maybe 350 if you stretch it out a little bit more. They still need a part of that, and PlayStation has a huge stake in that ecosystem themselves, and Nintendo eats up the other 40% of it pretty much. So that's why they're making these type of partnerships that they're making now. That's why they're willing to go out and say, we're going to put these games in other places like that. That's why exclusivity isn't as important to them as it used to be. And I don't. And the thing is, Phil can come out here and say anything he wants to say about exclusivity not mattering, and it's not important to them, because at one point it was very important to them. But just like everything else, things change. I'm not going to poo-poo them for things changing, because, the dynamics of the business of Xbox has changed. Gaming is still gaming. Rising budgets and everything are still rising budgets. The fact that games are costing more and it takes longer to build games, that's affecting everybody. And the one company that you would think could withstand that if they wanted to is Microsoft. They just choose not to withstand that, and they choose to say, we're going to maximize our business by putting the business somewhere else, because our business isn't sustainable in the way that we want it to be versus everybody else with the players that we have. And when I mean the players, I mean the player base that they, consider Xbox gamers, outside of that ecosystem. So, this is just more of the same thing that he's been saying. He just says it a little bit different, and it comes off a little bit different every time he says it. But this has been a conversation pretty much ever since 2021, 2022. And, at first it was about not wanting to, putting games where only Game Pass exists. And now it's all about every screen is an Xbox. Your refrigerator's an Xbox. The PlayStation that you're going to be booting Sea of Thieves up at some point in the future, that's part of the Xbox ecosystem now. So that's kind of what they're looking at. And good for them. If they can make it work that way, that's fine. Because I do think that they still need to be a part of the gaming conversation. But they need to make some really, really hard decisions, some looks in the mirror when it comes to the next generation of what they want to do. Because the moment that they stop producing consoles, I feel like that's when Xbox isn't Xbox anymore. It's already heading in that direction, but we're getting dangerously closer and closer to that being a reality than anything that we ever thought was going to happen in the past.
Yeah, let me grab some super chats here, gentlemen. Give me just a second, a little behind here in super chats. We have Chrono Rig with the $5 super chat. Thank you for that, Chrono Rig. Says, would it be smart to launch a Xbox handheld the same year of the Switch 2? So it would have to be 2026? No. What do you guys think?
It's two different. I think it's two different markets. The people that are going, I don't think people like, if you're thinking like there is a dynamic of gamers that partake in both ecosystems, but I think Nintendo based, unless you're going to tell me that most third-party games are going to flock over to that ecosystem, that's the only way I see Xbox being really hindered in that regard, which could happen because if Nintendo comes out with a handheld that's more powerful enough to be able to do what third-party developers want to do on it. We already seen that they're willing to put their games, just because how popular the Switch is, we've seen them willing to put it on weaker hardware. So what would they do if they actually have a more powerful piece of hardware that could at least keep up to what we get on like Xbox One S and Xbox One X, type of performance and stuff like that. If they could do that, then it might be. But outside of that, it's two different demographics, pretty much like how Steam Deck is compared to everything else. It doesn't really hurt the sales, but it's not as many people buying it because that's like a high-end luxury purchase at that point compared to Switches for a lot more people.
And then JD Gamer with a $10 super chat. Thank you for that super chat. JD Gamer says, to add clarification on my question, I'm talking about Microsoft leveraging what they are already good at and simply getting all games by using the new handheld as a Windows portable with Xbox as a hypervisor. Any thoughts on that panel?
Yep, yes. I don't. Again, like I've said about a lot of their strategies, I don't think them coming out with a handheld is a bad strategy. Right. Part of that because I kind of think they've bottomed out, and so like there's no making it any worse. But if I talk about the isolated people who are like really fans of Xbox, and again, people who are fans of Xbox are Americans, Westerners, that perspective, people who drive muscle cars, drink Bud Light. Like when I say those things, I mean I'm joking, but I'm
including those things.
I include myself. I mean, the reason I fell in love with the Xbox brand was because it is Americanized, because it is Western. After spending decades growing up with a primarily Eastern-dominated console market, so those people in that small demographic, that less than 10%, right, of the console install base of the market now, yes, they'll welcome a handheld. So it's not a bad idea. It's not a bad idea to have Xbox content on that handheld in a portable format. I'll buy one, and to have those games that you can take with you on the go and have that continuity of progress. And if you enable different modes in that operating system by virtualisation, like they've done within their operating system for Linux and Android, then yeah, that's fine. I wouldn't just me personally. I know where some of these things coming from. I wrote it today. I would be less concerned about the technobabble, right? It really is irrelevant whether it's a hypervisor, a VM, a container, right? Like the cloud, it doesn't matter. I mean, Microsoft will figure all that stuff out. It should not define the experience. Like any user who's consuming that game or that application, it should be completely irrelevant to them what's happening at the infrastructure level, at the foundational code level, right behind the glass in the delivery mechanism. And some of the commentary on how it's going to be delivered isn't necessarily correct, or isn't the only option that they'll have to deliver it anyway. So I would just personally be less focused on that.
Yeah, and then JD Gamer with another $2 super chat. Thank you, JD. He says, B, are you saying we need Peter Moore back? Is that what you're saying, B?
I don't know if it needs to be Peter Moore, but it needs to be somebody other than the crew that they have there right now, because they're all following the same message, and the message that's currently running around that office is not working for them.
My pitch, I'm gonna expand on my previous theory. My pitch would be they need to pay whatever amount of money they need to pay to Strauss and his partner.
Strauss. Man.
Bring them over. I've said it before. Bring them over for a limited time. They don't need to be over there forever. They need to be over there for a year to look at the lieutenants, figure out who the anointed one is going to be, groom that person under their tutelage for a year, and then let that person take over. But the other thing they need to do, right now that I've talked about this Western problem, this Americanized problem, this fact that they don't have the talent to figure their way out of the paper bag to get their feet on a firm marketing hold in Asia, Latin America, and Europe. And I think what they need to do is they need to headhunt and pay whatever they need to pay to poach someone from Nintendo and put them, if not in charge of their software side of their business, but very high up in their software side of their business, and have that person be the Herman Hulst of their organization, because Matt Booty is not the guy, and deliver that creative guidance. Because
not Matt Booty.
Because what is the Nintendo president's name again? I just
Doug Bowser.
No. The president, not the American guy. Some of that starts with a T. I'll have to look it up. But that guy's comments this week at GDC was like it was basically the industry has lost the mission. Like they're all focused, and I don't necessarily agree with him, but he's like they're all focused on power and frames, and they've lost the mission of creativity and building games. And I get it, Nintendo does a different thing, and that's fine. But Xbox needs some of that. They need some of that in their talent makeup, in their schema, in their leadership, because it appears that they have none of that. Whatever it is Nintendo has, like they've got none of it. Xbox is, and again, I love them for it. Xbox is focused on building Mustang 5.0s, raw power, right? But in their hyper focus of doing that, they've lost what seems to be any notion of elegance and creativity and things that are appealing on a global scale. So I think they need Strauss. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yep.
You remember, I don't know if you remember, I can't remember how many years back was this. It was 2018, 2019. Matt Booty did an interview everybody was talking about this interview because he rarely speaks, right? He's too busy green lighting everything, right? And being ran over by his own developers. Anyway, Matt Booty did an interview and he talked about Hellblade. And he was talking about like this is like the example of what they were looking for when they started their acquisition spree. When they wanted, here's the AA game that has a AAA feel. Like it feels like a AAA game, but it's a AA game made by 24 developers. Like these are, we want to do this, but just like a little bit more. That's what he was trying to get the gist to, and a lot of people was just like, you know, both sides taking it out of context. Oh, he didn't mean that from one side, the other side. Oh, he means there's never going to be any AAA games. But when you really look at the context in the meat of what he was saying trying to get a AAA kind of experience from a AA budget game. So why is Phil Spencer out here complaining about AAA games?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like, and I didn't catch that interview. I didn't catch that interview, but from what you said, he said. It seems like that is what they are doing with, and I'm sorry, I don't have the names, the titles of these games memorized, but the ones that leap out of my head are the one that takes place in Louisiana.
South of Midnight.
So that one, and the one that looks like BioShock.
Clockwork.
Yeah, that's by the Magic Obscura guys. Yeah. So those two games have that feel. They feel like they are like just below AAA, like AA kind of size budget with like not a team of like 500 people, but like a team of like 50 something.
Yeah. And
I mean I don't disagree with him from that perspective. If they could figure out how to do that, but then execute. I mean, it's so funny. We've talked about these emails right from the hearing. Because it still flabbergasts me to this day that like Phil's having a discussion with Sarah and Matt about their failure to plan the production pipeline because in 2022 the only thing they had planned in the bag was Starfield, and when Starfield slipped they had nothing.
Yeah.
Right, and he's giving them the whole rah speech, like basically you guys have effed up and we need to do better than that in the future, but let's just fix the problem now. But it seems like, you know, executing on that kind of a strategy. Yeah, but the thing he mentions in that email that I've mentioned before is that, look, we need to start the wheels of this software factory and get these things producing, even if it means, right, having games in the quiver that we hold on to, because we've got to start pacing and spreading them out to feed the subscription service. And that's exactly what I've said before. I've said, when I sat down and did like the math on software projections and estimates, right, with these 33 studios lined up, I said, look, if they do this thing right, what they will have is like in a 12-month time span, they will have 4 more games than they need, and they should hold on to those for when a team then says, hey, my schedule's slipping.
Yeah, I feel you, but then I also look at, and it just kind of hit me just now that like Phil Spencer's kind of sleight of hand here, because in his quotes from GDC, he's talking about like kind of like a justification for putting your games on rival platforms, AAA budgets, the cost of things, they're going higher and higher. He's mentioning $300 million games, which I don't know any of Xbox's games that hit that budget. Maybe Halo Infinite by accident. But like we know that Spider-Man 2 was close to that. Now, here's the funny thing is that the first 4 games they put over on Nintendo and PlayStation, only one of those games likely has a AAA budget. We know it's not Pentiment.
Right.
We know it's not Hi-Fi Rush, and we know it's not Grounded. So like 2 of those games were made by less than 20 developers on the full team for the full games. And I don't know how big Tango is, but like Hi-Fi Rush is not a AAA game. The only one that definitely is a AAA game is the entire Rare studio made Sea of Thieves and has been doing all that additional content on it post-launch since 2018. All of that all together is definitely going to cost a AAA budget. But that's the only AAA game you put on other platforms, and you're talking about, well, we need to do this because of AAA budgets. And it's like, but these ain't the AAA games that you got. Your AAA game is Halo Infinite, Forza Horizon 5. Go ahead, B.
I was gonna say the only reason Sea of Thieves would even be that high is because of the licensing that they did.
True. With Disney.
Pirates, yeah, Pirates of the Caribbean and things like that. That's the only reason why that budget would even, climb to be that high. So, I mentioned before when Phil was in an interview and he said that, they're not in the market to make these $100 million games. They want to make games for $80 million and $60 million, which, like you guys mentioned, out of the latest games that they have announced, that's kind of what they're looking to do, which is fine. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, are great titles. It doesn't really matter. But to kind of use that excuse as to why you're putting your games on rival consoles, that's false information, because you're not spending that much money on making your games.
Right. Yeah, the reason he's saying that is because I certainly don't know what's going on inside the halls at Redmond, but it seems very much like there's just like there was a hyper focus on the acquisition rather than running the business at the time, which is how you get the acquisition done, but then you can currently have Redfall, Starfield, and Forza Motorsport, right? It seems like Phil and what he says is much more of a focus on pulling this psyop and getting people to be convinced about a thing that isn't really a thing, while Sarah and Matt are allowed to run the business. But I have doubts, unfortunately, about both of them now and their ability to do so.
Let me grab this other super chat here, gentlemen. Go ahead, B.
No, that wasn't. That was me about to say something, but go ahead.
Yeah, let me get the super chat real quick, slow-mo. Shivachu Prasad with a $2 super chat says, Phil isn't utopian. He just uses a dog whistle. Thank you for that super chat, sir. Go ahead, slow-mo.
No, I was just gonna say I gotta run. I got an early day tomorrow, so I'm trying to get a jump on that, and actually go to bed at a reasonable time tonight. So,
which means 1 a.m.
Gentlemen, sorry.
Which means 1 a.m.
No. 12:30. No. Anyway, no. I gotta get out of here. But you, great chat as usual. Great panel as usual. You guys have a great night. DPS podcast tomorrow. I'm pretty sure Forte will give the deets to that to everybody. I've been playing too much Cyberpunk. I said deets. All right, I'm out of here. You guys take care. Peace.
All right, Slow-Mo. All right, that's Slow-Mo Backslap. Please check him and give me Forte tomorrow at DPS. I'm sure Forte will talk about DPS when we wrap up tonight's show. But I do want to move on back to Christopher Dring and the GI Microcast. Again, Christopher Dring is head of GameIndustry.biz. He was speaking to James Batchelor, the editor-in-chief at GameIndustry.biz. Again, if you are not getting your news from GameIndustry.biz, I highly suggest you do. I've said this before on the show, they are one of the last great bastions of gaming journalism. So let's see here. Here we go. So Christopher Dring, on his microcast, he's discussing GDC last week. He said one of the things, one of his takeaways from GDC was that he thinks Xbox is in real trouble as a hardware manufacturer. And again, he's also speaking to the performance of Xbox in Europe, just as he describes it, flatlining. We talked about this earlier. The year-over-year numbers for Xbox in Europe, they are down 47%. The prior year, they were down 32%. So this is what he's referring to. He says, the other thing I heard it from a very prominent company and one not so prominent, was Xbox's performance in Europe is just flatlining. He then goes on to say, you can follow our monthly coverage in the games market, and you can see that Xbox sales are falling. And it's been falling all throughout last year, and it's falling even harder this year. He then goes on to say, The phrase one major company who released a big game last year said was, "I don't know why we bother supporting it." He then says, "We've mentioned on previous podcasts that we'd heard retailers in Europe are considering or had already been cutting back their Xbox stock on their shelves, hardware, games, that kind of thing. And now you've got third-party publishers going, we're putting in a lot of effort trying to create a Series S and a Series S version and an X version of a game when, to be honest with you, for us the market is PC and PS5." So that was what Christopher Dring was hearing from some developers and one particularly large publisher at GDC this year. So I'll throw this out to the panel. Anyone surprised by this? That Chris heard this at GDC?
Not at all.
Yeah, it'd be in where. Yeah, go ahead, man.
In this, even from when Capcom releases their sales numbers, and we see that the sales numbers on Xbox are abysmal when you compare it to the PC and PlayStation platform. We've seen other hints from other developers that they just aren't happy with games being actually selling on the platform. So this isn't news. I'm not surprised by this. I've been saying it for a long time. Xbox has taught people not to buy games. And that's just a fact. I don't care what nobody says. I don't care. People run all these numbers about how Microsoft says, Game Pass and encourages people to buy games and all this other nonsense. If that was the case, then developers wouldn't be having these conversations. People are not buying games. And it's obvious. We've seen it in multiple reports. This is not something new. And we see more and more when a developer decides not to put a game on the platform, it's usually Xbox. So I'm not surprised by this at all. This is par for the course. When your console is not selling and people are not buying games, why would people continue to put games over there? This is the business at the end of the day. It costs money to put games on a platform. They just don't magically show up there. So to get the return on investment, they're going to put it where people are buying the games.
Yeah, I don't.
Simple.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I mean, we've seen, like you mentioned Capcom, and I'd have to go back, but I believe that either through their financials or maybe some reporting, if you look at some of the sales numbers of games on the Xbox versus other platforms, there's a pretty wide gap. Sometimes those games on Xbox are single digits.
Games. Yeah, some of their biggest games are over 1 million sales. Some of their biggest Capcom games are only over 1 million sales on Xbox.
Yeah. Yep. No, it's crazy. Sorry, I was trying to pull up this because there was something there that he said about developers saying that they see the market as PC, PS5. And there was, I believe that I'm trying to find this here. I can't find. I thought I'd saved it on my computer because you have to download it. But I think you saw this, Logic. The report coming out of GDC is kind of like the state of the industry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to say there's something there about developers, like the platforms they want to develop for, and I want to say it was like PC, PS5. The next Switch. There's something there. Yeah,
no, with that regard, I mean, Xbox, for whatever reason, I mean, I even questioned that as I looked at it. I mean, for whatever reason, that choice of hardware targets for developers, Xbox is right up there at parity with with PlayStation. A skosh behind it. What people indicated as them backing off of this year in comparison to past years was mobile and cloud.
Okay.
And the addition was that there was an 8% new arrival of teams targeting whatever the next Switch is.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. Sorry, some of the chat has the Capcom numbers. But yeah, I don't disagree with you. I mean, like when you consider the decline in hardware, and you look at like we've seen these, we see the things with Capcom, Final Fantasy 15, the total sales for that game, Xbox accounted for about under 10% of sales of that particular game. Majority of the sales were on PlayStation 4 for Final Fantasy 15. So we've seen instances where games haven't just done well on that platform, and so when you're seeing that kind of decline in growth, I mean, I can't say that I'm surprised that developers and a publisher are saying this. Now, obviously, not maybe not all publishers, developers feel that way, but there is that sentiment out there. Yeah, what about you, Forte? What are your thoughts on this, man?
I mean, pretty much said it already. I mean, it's just they're dealing with situations that they put themselves in. It's a generational thing at this point. It's not something that's going to get fixed overnight. And the biggest thing is you're not going to spend $70 billion and think that Microsoft isn't going to have more oversight over it. $7 billion to us is a lot of money, but to Microsoft, they looked at it probably as like, hey, this is something we could do to like keep the division where it needs to be at in a content way. But then when Activision came around calling and Microsoft decided to make the plunge on that, that's a whole different level of oversight right there. And part of me feels like that decision was kind of taken out of their hands at that point. It's like, we need to make big money moves when it comes to the things that we're doing right now. We put a lot of money down in the division. Now we want to see that division just surviving isn't enough for them no more. It has to turn a profit. Only way it's going to turn a profit in a expedient way is by putting the games in other places. So that's what they're going to do. And that's kind of the deal that was made, or probably not made, but just was told to them like, hey, this is what we got to do now because we need to make sure that this division stays profitable. And then this is also going off of the fact that you can't expect Call of Duty to be Call of Duty forever. We always say it's never going to fall off, but the faster they can get back to even with that deal, the better off that deal is going to look for them long term. Because right now it looks good because we feel like that's never going to fall off, but they want to expedite that process to get it to a net zero where they do nothing but gain off of that. So if that takes putting all the other games in their portfolio on the platform, that's what they're going to do to kind of facilitate that to happen faster. And yeah, but that's I mean, it's no other really way that you can kind of put it at this point, because they made the decision a while ago by putting the first 4 games on other platforms, and we already know no matter what they say, more is coming.
What about you, Logic?
What? Yeah, I'm sorry. What was the question?
What are your thoughts about what Chris Strigg was saying? He's hearing out GDC about Xbox.
I mean, over there playing Fortnite.
No. Somebody I was BRAP has missed a super chat, so I'm trying to help manage that. And then there were some other comments in the chat, but yeah. I mean, like B said, like we've been saying that for 2 years. I mean, I've said, yeah, I've made an attempt to kind of talk through, like this is the calculus that a corporation, a company, a publisher has to go through when they're greenlighting a project and they're taking into account all the business variables that affect that project's profitability. And when you talk about what platforms you want to deploy on, right, what I've talked about is like, look, when you're making a selection to go to Xbox, you're onboarding some additional engineering LOE. So there's additional engineering labor hours that go into that to deploy on that platform. You look at your addressable market on that platform is now 27 million customers, right? In comparison to the available customers on PC, PlayStation, and Nintendo. And then you go over there and I talk about like you have the Nintendo Wii problem, right? And I think I don't know if I posted this, but I think I tried to. Like you go back. What you should do, and I mention this every week. I mention things you should go back and read, right? You should go back and read the articles that were coming out like around 2014 and sometimes, a little earlier about, why did the Nintendo Wii fail? And we all think of the Nintendo Wii as like a big success, and it sold big at the outset. But then it dried up to like an oasis in the desert. And one of the reasons it did is because third-party publishers started pulling support. I mean, they started pulling support partially, because of the power of the available power on the console, and they were just like, we're not gonna, like, I'm not gonna put up with that pain in the ass, right? To shrink my delivery target down that small. But the other reason they did it is because, look, their calculus was, if I put my game on Nintendo Wii, my biggest competitor on Nintendo Wii is the redonkulous attach rate that Nintendo first-party titles have to that console. They were looking at an attach rate that was breaking historical records, and they were like, I can't get in sideways there because people who have the Wii, like all of them, run out and buy the first-party titles. So the competitive landscape for third-party publishers just got to the point where, look, again, there's not enough juice for the squeeze here. The calculus today when you go to Xbox is who are your competitors? Your competitors are not the other like marquee titles or titles within your market segment, right? Given the budget for your project and the level of fidelity, right, and scope that it provides. That's not your competition. That's your competition anyway, right? But the other big bear, right, in your market is the 500 games that sit in Game Pass. And so you've got to worry about what your normal competitive stature is on any platform, right? But then you have this other beast that is all about low cost of access. So you've got a significant number of kind of negative multipliers there to take into context with everything else that you normally consider. And as we can see, there are publishers, there are independent development teams, there are people who are making choices to not deploy on Xbox today, and it has nothing to do with Sony giving them an exclusive deal. They are just deciding that the engineering labor effort associated with deploying to that platform drags them out of a profitability envelope and into a risk envelope that they are not willing to stomach. And so the comment that, I mean, what I wrote in response to whoever was talking about it, like on Twitter this week, was like, great, like Christopher Dring heard a soundbite. Like nobody needed to hear that soundbite to draw those conclusions. Like we've told you guys about those here for the last 2 years. Like the fact that we heard a soundbite, that's just corroboration. I mean, but we've been able to make that analysis and that assessment, right, for a very long time.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Logic. Because you're right, you didn't necessarily have to hear that soundbite to come to that conclusion if you've been paying attention to the numbers and the data that's been coming out. We'll grab a super chat from Anonymous Ross, $2 super chat says, Forte told me to tell you all Deus Ex conspiracy is number one. I don't know what that means, Forte.
What?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't either.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the super chat. JD Gilbert, the $5 super chat says, by the way, somebody in the live chat, I forget his name, I apologize. Miko in the live chat actually just DM'd me the Capcom numbers, and I'm looking at these numbers now. I mean, there are some games that sold 8 times more on the PlayStation 5 than they did on the Xbox Series console. 8 times. So think about that for a second. JD Gamer with the $5 super chat. Thank you for JD for the super chat. Says question for the panel: how much do you estimate it costs to take an already completed game then port it to another platform? I'll let you answer that question, Logic.
I'm sorry. Say that one more time.
JD's asking the question: how much do you estimate it costs to take an already completed game then port it to another platform?
An already completed game. I don't know. Not right off the top of my head. I think I've done a cost model of the estimated cost to make a AAA game. So if I could get back to that math, I could extrapolate off of that. for the port. I think Falke has quoted that at some point there was an interview with Sony executives that put that, he said something about them putting that number at 30 million if the game is already complete. The other thing that we talked about on Doom's podcast a couple of weeks ago is the other thing to realize is it also changes your depreciation and amortization model when you're doing a port. So if you've expended the capital expense, right, the upfront investment that you have to have, and you're carrying that expense on your books to get a game out the door, when that game starts shipping, you start doing depreciation on those capital expenses, and you start working that off the books, which, right, carrying a capital expense has a negative impact on your on the calculated financial health of your company. Working that expense off then has a positive effect. And then, of course, as you're collecting revenue, right, that also helps with that optic and the angle of that financial health. So if by the time you do the port, you've worked off a chunk of that capital expense, think of it as kind of equity in a home, right? Now when you do the cost of the port's like hugely incremental. And I'm not sure exactly how they carry it on their books. If they carry it as a different expense line item, right, depreciation, amortization, I'm not sure. But the point is that when you start selling that port, the mixture of what percentage of that port's revenue is upside versus how much goes to working off the expense is greater. And so the financial health of that line of business, right, will appear healthier on the books than, right, the huge upfront capital expense that you were carrying to get the first increment of the game out the door. So that's one of the things that impacts the optics, right, of doing a staggered port, right, after you've already shipped, right, the AAA game with its huge budget.
All right, I got another super chat from JD Gamer, $2 super chat. Says, at Forte, you were right. It went well. I'll show you. I don't know what he means, Forte, but he's going to show you.
He'll come up there and tell me tomorrow, probably.
Okay. All right, gentlemen. That's all I have for topics tonight, by the way. Unless anyone has anything else to say about GDC, what Christopher Drigg was reporting on GDC. If not, we'll go ahead and wrap up the show. But first of all, I want to thank everyone in the live chat for hanging out with us tonight. And thank you, everyone, for the super chats, too. All those who gave us super chats tonight, really appreciate the support. As always, thank you so much. And please do me a favor, hit that like button. And yeah, I won't forget traffic and weather, Brian Landis. But do me a favor, if you haven't done so, smash that like button. It helps out the show. And if you're new, subscribe, hit the bell notification so you are alerted when we go live. Actually, Ryan, you're right. It was kind of a news type show in the beginning as we were talking about the P. Diddy scandal and the unfortunate accident here in Maryland. And we were talking sports for a little bit, and then we finally got to gaming. So, but I want to thank the fine gentlemen here on the panel. Big shout out to Slow-Mo Backslap, who joined us and had to leave a little bit early. Gaming Forte, you and Slow-Mo have a show tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Let everyone know where they can listen to DPS.
Yeah, DPS 9 p.m. tomorrow on my channel and the DPS channel with the homie Slow-Mo. Come check us out. Gonna be a great one. And with that, enjoy the rest of your week.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Forte. Always a pleasure. And B-Money, if you want to be found, let these good people know where they can find you. B-Money's on mute. All right, we'll get back to B-Money. And if he doesn't come back, we'll give him a proper outro. And Game Logic, let everyone know where they can find you, assuming you want to be found.
Yeah, you can catch me on the Enough to Keep Going weekly games podcast on the E2KG Network podcasting channel on YouTube, 8:45 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on Sunday evenings. So, actually, and then as I say that, we are not doing an episode this Sunday because a bunch of us will be gone for spring break. We'll actually be broadcasting next Tuesday night, and then we'll be back on our regular schedule.
Oh, I forgot. Spring break already. That's crazy. Yeah, there may or may not be a BRAP next week, man. then because of spring break. But I'll let everyone know. Depends what's going on. And then big shout out to B Money 101 for joining us tonight. He's still on mute. So, but everyone, have a great rest of the week. Give me a follow on Twitter or X or whatever it's called these days. BRAP_podcast on the Twitters or X. And we will catch you next time. May do another BRAP rant later in the week. Maybe not. It depends. But outside of that, everyone, thank you so much. And we'll see you next time.